Episode 106 of Strange Brow Radio, trucking right along. My name's Tobe Johnson, and we have a really interesting case to discuss today with a witness who's come close, very close, with a werewolf. I would call it a werewolf. I think it's much cooler than a dog man. So we'll tell you more about her in a moment. But hey, while the holidays are here, and all you who basically listening right now are subscribers already, I appreciate you. You know that. But if you want extra kudos from me, you may get on over to Feral by Aaron, E-R-Y-N, at Etsy.com, and show a little love. There's beautiful stuff up there at Feral by Aaron, E-R-Y-N. And don't forget to check out Ira's website at heartunafraid.com. All right, more in a second with our guest. We'll be right back. All right, here we are. Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. The 21st coming up here quickly. Before we know it, it'll come and go, and you won't be able to see what happens for another 800 years. So make sure you get yourself up to some clear skies on top of a mountain and watch the sky, because Jupiter and Saturn are going to do their thing, and I know I'm not going to be here 800 years. I don't know if you're drinking the right stuff and are going to be here, but God bless you if you are, or somebody's blessing you. I don't know if it's God at that point. But yeah, the 21st, then of course Christmas coming up. I'll take the new Ford Bronco, and if you have the extra scratch, throw in the Cybertruck. Something off-road would be nice. This Jeep Renegade that I have gets good mileage, but my gosh, I can barely fit in it after all my COVID eating. So that's what I've got going on. I hope you're doing well out there. I don't know if anybody got a chance yet to go check out the fleet of what look like starcraft circling around the International Space Station. But go on over to third phase of Moon with the twin brothers and see their footage. They're the ones that, as far as I know, unearthed the footage of the monolith in Utah. And now, of course, the monoliths are popping up everywhere, like the Earth has taken a Viagra, and boom, boom, boom. It's. I even saw a gold one, which is cool. But now they've got footage of what looked like a fleet of starcraft circling around the International Space Station. I don't know what else it could be, but no one else has that footage. Also, I'll give a little shout out to one of the witnesses I talked to 3 years ago before I moved out of Eugene. His channel is called UFOs Over the U of O, which is the University of Oregon. So the UFO Over the U of O channel. And there's a really interesting footage from Cottage Grove that he's been posting of a blue triangular boomerang-shaped bright blue craft over the Al Moon area, really close to where things had happened. Really compelling footage, and I think I threw it up on my Facebook page. I'll put it up on the Patreon page so you guys can follow up on that as well, but that's coming up. Also over at Patreon, you got a little note from me regarding my plans for the upcoming year and everything going on. Like I said, we're working on couple different documentaries, including one specifically about the Al Moon Lab, and I will be releasing that on Patreon first. So definitely stick around for that, because it's going to take a little while to make sure it's good enough, perfect in fact, and so I want to put my stamp behind something that really resonates with you. Okay, our guest today goes by Asherah Vii. And she's had a life full of magic, including an incident or a moment with a werewolf or a dogman or a lichen. Something with a snout checking her out. And we get into all that, as well as show some video and photos on the YouTube page, which will be coming out here shortly. It may take me a little bit longer to put out the YouTube footage of Ashera and I, but what you can look forward to is Alex Whitcomb getting involved with his artistic skills to draw out exactly what Ashera saw, because this was no typical looking werewolf. She describes it, well, I'll let her do the describing, but very interesting stuff. So stay tuned for the YouTube clip as well, and the extended version of what happened that day with her and what she saw. Okay, my talk with Ashera. All right, my guest today is Asherah Vii, a woman with a lifetime of experiences, a life filled with experiences as well. So welcome to Strange Brow Radio, Asherah.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. And why don't you introduce yourself to the audience here and tell them a little bit about the things that you've experienced.
Okay, great. So my paranormal journey, as I like to call it, it started when I had what I call an awakening. And basically what happened to me was, I feel like that's the moment where all of my inner abilities kind of woke up. And I know people a lot of times tend to scoff at the word ability. However, everybody's sensitive, but in just different ways, some stronger than others. And some people call it, just being observant, but there's a sensitivity that comes with high observancy. So that's when basically everything erupted for me. That's when all the paranormal experiences started out as spiritual paranormal experiences. And then because of that, I steered away from that and went to more of the cryptid researching first. Obviously, I'm only 12 years old, so I did a lot of couch researching, read books, watched a lot of TV, and I was having this turmoil of my own experiences. And I met some friends along the way that kind of pulled me out and taught me to embrace that and look into that and try to understand it rather than fear it. So about almost when I was 13 years old, I started going out and actually doing like my own researching, my own paranormal investigating, and with like a notebook and a pencil and this piece of paper and just doing different things like that. And basically making my own research methods, because that wasn't really a thing then. I don't look it, but I'm close to 40, so it wasn't really a thing then. You didn't talk about it, and the people you did talk about, it was just a close circle. So I've kind of been researching since I was 12, I would say. I got really serious into researching all sides of the paranormal when I was about 24. Is when I really branched off and started looking more into other types of lore and mythology and things like that, and expanding my knowledge base. And I've just been kind of going ever since. And about 4 or 5 years ago is when I went more public with my research. I felt like I had earned the right to be more in the public eye and to be able to know about things. And so that's when I went more public. And now I am... My focal point has changed. It started out as wanting to understand things. Then it went to wanting to help people. Now it's wanting to help people and help the entities, while at the same time trying to find a connection to it all. So,
right.
Yeah. So I've really grown as a researcher.
Right. Now, do you go out with other people? Are you a solo researcher a lot of times?
I am solo many times. A lot of what I do is I'll have guest investigators, people that I feel like would be good in specializing, not expertise, but specializing, focusing on one general area. Say I'm going in expecting maybe some sort of cryptid. So I would get somebody that specializes in cryptids of that genre. Or if I was going into a demonic case, I would look at maybe a demonologist or an angelologist to be on my team. So I kind of build a team each time that would specialize in different things.
Right. But you dabbling a little bit in all these things yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like it's helped me to know where to go in investigation, what branch to take versus others. And I'm not saying other people's way is bad, but I feel like it's very narrow-minded, and it really keeps the mind closed on being able to really understand what's going on. And I feel like when you allow yourself to branch out and you allow yourself to become more knowledgeable in other topics, then that helps you understand the topic that you really want to focus on a lot better. So I'm not saying it's bad to veer away to be focused on one specific thing. However, I feel like to fully understand it, you need to also look into other things as well.
Right. So this bleed over that we're all familiar with, and how this connective tissue all wraps around to the giant body of the paranormal. Talk about that a little bit and what you found.
Actually, I've been talking to some really amazing people recently who have put me in touch with some research that's being done that basically talks about where consciousness is stored within the body. And it happens as like synapses between the neurons rather than within. And this research, I feel like, would help us understand of how where things sit on a plane where we can't see them, but we experience them. We know that they're there, even though we can't experience them as we know. So that's kind of like the new way I'm heading. I'm trying to figure out where your brain plays a part in your experiences.
Right, right. The idea of consciousness not being necessarily attached to one single part of the body. So, what are you walking away with bits of evidence to establish this as something repeatable, or what have you found?
This is kind of like a new path for me. I've always been really interested in how the brain plays a part in the retelling of your experience. I focus a lot in psychology in school, and there was just a lot of different things that to look at when it comes to how we uh, perceive an experience, how because our brain tends to fill in blanks. If it's a real fast experience, your brain wants to fill in all the blanks. Your brain has to know everything that happens. So where you describe seeing a flying squirrel that was flapping its wings in the sky, it could have very well been just a really weird looking bird that was flying at an odd angle for just a split second. So not to discount a lot of experiences, but I think a lot of experiences can be explained with the way our brain tries to fill in some of those blanks.
Right, yeah. Well, the flying squirrel has to be some kind of cryptid. It's too bizarre to be anything else. I mean, if it's not the Mothman, it's pretty damn close to weird.
Yeah. 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 But I mean, there's so much to factor in when looking at experience. If you're looking at it from a real skeptical eye, not an eye that wants to discount it or prove it, you just really want to understand it. I think that that's a lot of what some people might be missing, because it's exciting to find something cool. It's exciting to get really cool evidence. However, if you let that excitement get to you, you're basically doing yourself a disservice by jumping to conclusions. And then somebody comes along behind you and they're like, well, this is probably what it is. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. So
Right. Now, have you been surprised in your research to find out that there are certain things that are true? I mean, we all have a bullshit meter, and we're all thinking maybe the same thing, that, certain things just have to be a crock. But, if you're an active investigator, time and time again, it seems as though these things kind of prove themselves to be worthy of looking into. Talk about some incidents where that's happened for you.
To be honest with you, I go into a situation with a completely blank slate. At least I try to, as best I can. Everybody's going to have their own little personal viewpoints to throw in on a situation, but I try to do it the best I can. However, I've had so many personal experiences over my life that it's hard for me to say this shit don't exist. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can say that. This stuff doesn't exist. It does. I know for a fact, because for me, a person when it comes to an investigation in the mindset that I have, where I'm not afraid to call it natural, a natural phenomena. Um, I feel like that adds validity to my own personal experiences that I'm able to tell. And I feel like that also adds validity to experiences where I'm like, look, I have no other explanation for this except for. So I feel like that's important.
Yeah. So you're a paranormal investigator. You've been into some haunted houses. Did I hear you mention that you've been into some demonic houses as well?
Yes, I've dealt with personally a demonic situation. It's something I kind of brought on to myself, unfortunately. So there's been my own personal demonic experience that I had to deal with, but there's been other demonic experiences where it seems
Oh,
like,
wait, we have to stop. We have to start with you. Is that something you're okay to talk about?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All
So
right, let's start there.
I dabble in all types of magical phenomena. I've kind of settled on my own sort of chaos magic where I picked bits and pieces out of different types of magic that I feel like fit me, and I use those. And but I've studied a lot of different kinds. Probably the scariest one I studied was like dark witchcraft, basically, like the old stuff where the satanic panic was going around and stuff. Like, you know, I know that was a lot later than, or a lot earlier than that. However, it still fell over into my time frame where witchcraft was automatically dark and demonic. So when I dabbled in it, that's where I went. I went dark and demonic with it because that was the expectation. Very scary experience. I basically, I feel like I ripped open a portal per se in my own home. This portal stayed active throughout my whole life, the whole time I lived there. However, the main thing that came out of it, what ripped it open, was this demonic entity. Um, I feel like it was almost on the verge of like high class demonic. Like this was a very dark being that I dealt with. Um, I was
Something with a name, something with a hierarchy, all that. Mm.
like stature.
Mm-hmm.
It felt very powerful, and it lingered, but it didn't stay. A lot of what it brought with it was a lot of bad things with it. So every time it would come in, it would bring like 5 other bad things with it. So it would come and go. I dealt with, I guess, the closest thing you could call a possession. I had a lot of missing time, a lot of unexplained behavior, things like that, that I didn't recall. And I battled this thing for about 3 years, and I couldn't really go to nobody. My mom, you know, I grew up in a very religious background, and I grew up being basically called the devil because a lot of the things that happened around me were very unexplained, and people thought I was bringing demonic entities with me wherever I went. So I didn't really want to go to my mom and be like, pretty sure I might be possessed. So what I did was I just learned how to battle it on my own. And finally, I got this thing to go. However, the doorway never stayed closed. And the doorway seemed to be a very negative doorway. There wasn't really any positive things that came through the whatever this was that I ripped open. It was a lot of negative. So I actually moved. Go ahead.
Well, what kind of, we don't have to get into specifics, but as far as things that occurred, anomalous things, to give a little perspective on how all this is real, is it, are we talking like something you'd see in a movie, or is it even more
Yes.
strange?
Very movie-esque, very movie-esque, which I think is strange. When you've been doing this long enough, you really don't see a lot of the stuff that you see in movies. It doesn't happen like that. It's not that crazy. It's not that severe. And it tends to have a lot of blank spots where nothing happens. This house was not like that. It did have that blank spot, but it was a very short one. It was a very short window of nothing happening. But the types of phenomena that would tend to happen after I ripped open this portal was the kitchen was a very hot area. I would go into the kitchen. As I was walking to the kitchen, the chairs would always pull out from under the table, always. It was very rare if you ever saw it happen, but they would always be out. And we didn't do that growing up. All the chairs were always in. I'd push the chairs in to get through to go to the other room. come back out. They'd all be pulled out again. Or I would be standing at the stove with the table and the chairs behind me, doing something at the microwave or the stove. Everything's pushed in. 2 seconds, turn around, they're all pulled out again. I've even been sitting there with friends, even as an adult, and all the chairs except for the ones we were sitting in would just fly out from underneath the table.
Now, did these things happen when you turn your head, or was it the last incident? Was that something you witnessed?
Yeah, sometimes you would witness it. Very often, though, it's a lot of times like a head game. They want you to know what's going on, but they don't want you to be able to tell anybody what's going on. So a lot of times the stuff that you're experiencing alone, on your own. You don't have anybody to really go to for it, because the goal is they can't really affect you physically in ways that people claim. I know that they can cause health problems and things like, but they can't just kill you. That's just not the way it works. And so a lot of times what they'll do is they'll play a lot of head games. Part of those head games is everything that you're experiencing, you're doing on your own. So that messes with your psyche quite bad. So a lot of the things that happened were targeted at me, because the goal was make me think I'm going crazy and get to my psyche, break me down, basically.
Right. So it's a mind game, and then the physical stuff comes in later.
Yeah. Well, they can harm you physically, but it's very it's like flesh wounds. Like they can scratch you, they can make you bruise, they can do things like that. They can cause health problems, but it's like a time thing. The longer you give them, the worse they can affect you. The longer you let things settle into the atmosphere and the environment, the worse it gets.
Right. And did you say missing time?
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of missing time. There would be periods where I would miss the school bus, and all of a sudden 2 hours later I'm answering the phone and my mom's like, why aren't you at school? And I was waiting for the bus. I don't know. Things like that. Or
there's no accounting for where you went? No,
because now with everything I experienced, I have home cameras. Always got cameras on. They will mess with them and turn them off or tinker with them where they don't record a lot of times. But yeah, I didn't have anything, because I'd be home alone waiting for the bus. And my mom would already be at work. So who knows? And that was the scariest part for me, was I had pets. What if I'm having these blank out moments and, something takes over me and I do something harmful? That was such a scary thing for me. And I couldn't talk to nobody about it.
Wow. So in the missing time world, of course, we're looking up to the stars and thinking abduction experiences. Does your family have a history of that at all?
Yes and no. My family doesn't really like to talk about things like that, but there have been stories that have creeped in over the years growing up, where you'll catch a weird story here and there that they really don't normally talk about. And I know my dad has had a lot of experiences, and I think a lot of experiences he put off to demonic experiences, but with his narrow-mindedness, they very well could have been abduction experiences. Who knows? I don't know. I wasn't there, but they fell on the line similar to an abduction experience a lot of times when he would talk about them.
Okay, but nothing specific about it. Nothing specific.
He would talk a lot about the giant hand that would pull him out of his bed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's giant hands. So, but there's a lot of screen memory that happens in UFO experiences and UFO abductions,
right,
where what you remember and what you can recall is nowhere near what you experiences, because there's that theory that they're putting that screen memory there to keep you from being able to know.
Right. And have you ever thought about being regressed?
I have. However, I'm a really bad person. I don't really qualify for hypnotism. I've tried it.
Right. We're gonna regress you right now. I'm gonna bring in. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. Come on in, Mark.
Live on air now.
We're gonna do a live regression.
Hey, I'm game for anything once.
No, we have a couple videos on our Patreon site of some people that have had it done, guests that have been on the show, and they've been nice enough to allow us to air the regression. It's a traumatic
That's awesome. Oh,
a
have to,
traumatic
is it?
experience. Yeah, I mean it's,
Man.
but I think that it's legit to the point where I would look into it myself if I had something like what you're describing, just because it seems like a deeper. It's a deeper kind of consciousness to
Hmm.
recall facts that are buried, right?
Yeah, and
Mm.
I think slowly but surely those have started to come out over time. There's I don't remember anything prior to the age of 12, before I had my quote unquote awakening. Prior to the age of 12, I was diagnosed with seizures. Looking at it from but after my awakening, I never suffered another one. It was just miraculous healing of this seizure disorder that I was diagnosed with. Um, but that I mean, some people say, well, maybe that's what was going on when you were 17 and you were having these breakout moments, and
Right. Yeah.
but it wasn't the same. Like I would remember these quote
Mm.
unquote seizures a lot of times that they said I
Right.
was having. A lot of it was just some really crazy visuals that I would see.
Yeah. Were you under medical care for those?
I was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't even know that I had seizures prior to the age of 12 because I didn't remember that anything prior to the age of 12 except for recently some things are starting to creep back. Um, but I didn't remember anything prior to the age of 12. So I didn't even know I had these seizures. Well, my mom and I were talking about whatever happened to this cat around the time I was 12 years old. And she said, that was the time he stopped having seizures too. And I'm like, wait, I had seizures? What? So I pulled a lot of my childhood records and found out a bunch of medical records showing where I had these diagnosed seizures that
Hmm.
I've never suffered today.
Right. Or
So
any lingering effects of it? No speech impairment or nothing like that? No
nothing.
strokes?
No, nothing.
Mm-mm.
Nothing. I might be a little less smart from it, but who knows?
Right. Right. Well, do you get your deprived oxygen for a period of time too when you have a seizure, right?
Really? Yeah. Yeah, that's true because there's so many brain cells that kills each time, and that's what causes seizure death. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a real thing, and it's a real scary thing, and the fact that I didn't even know about it,
Right.
it's crazy because that I feel like that's kind of important to me.
Yeah. So, did your folks keep stuff from you like that often?
No, I think that was just something that just slipped through the lines, just because once they were gone, they just it was never brought back up again. It was never anything that was discussed. Now that I think about it, there isn't much that was discussed prior to me being 12 years old, to be honest with you.
Right. Okay. So, you've been to some interesting places. You've had some interesting things happen to you, and then you asked whether or not the show was geared towards Sasquatch, and I said, well, the foundation of it kind of began there, but it's by no means all we talk about. But how does the bleed over with cryptids get involved with all this other stuff, and what have you found out?
My intro to it bleeding over had a lot to do with the fairy lights phenomena that is witnessed a lot of times. It's also called ignis fatuus, jack-o'-lanterns. That's where the story of jack-o'-lanterns came from. So this is a phenomena that's witnessed a lot of times in Bigfoot areas. And I wondered why. Why is this weird, almost spiritual phenomena occurring in a Bigfoot area? And when I looked into that question, it opened this huge doorway for me. And again, there was never a bleed over for me. I was always very much, I researched cryptids and ghosts and UFOs. Now I just say I research the paranormal, the supernatural, like,
Right.
but the bleed over started with the ignis fatuus. Uh, so that's really what made me start thinking maybe I can use my ghost equipment in these Bigfoot areas. So I started doing that. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I can use my Bigfoot stuff in spiritual areas. So now I just have this big collection of like really cool stuff that I can use wherever I go. And I tend to find a lot of times you get a lot of the same phenomena. You get a lot of like strange EVPs or EMS spikes. You get a lot of strange lights, flashes of lights that'll occur. You get a lot of yells. because you get them in both locations. So it's a lot of the same stuff.
Describe the lights.
The lights, the Ignis Fatuus lights specifically, the description of what
I've never heard that name. Ignis Fatuus?
Yes, yeah, it's basically like floating fire. It's Latin for floating fire.
Okay, I like it.
So this floating fire ball is said to be blue, green, or yellow many of the times. And it's almost, when you see it, it's almost as if you're watching somebody with a flashlight or a lantern walking through an area. Like you'll see it bob up and down and bob up and down. The only thing is, it tends to have intelligence. So when you get close to it, it'll get further from you. Or if you get too close and it lets you get too close, it'll shoot up in the air and just burst. So the stories that are told about those are very similar. They tend to be very similar with each other. However, in haunted locations, you'll get a lot of these little light bursts, or even you'll get the flashlight looking where it looks like somebody's walking through with a flashlight.
Right. Is there a organic quality to these lights?
There has not been any that's been seen. It's just basically a floating light. However, scientists want to blame it on combustible materials in mossy wetlands, or swampy areas, where this stuff begins to rot under the surface, basically. And when it pushes out, it can push out in like a gaseous form and ignite. And scientists are blaming, because even scientists have caught these phenomena on video. So they've got to come up with an explanation, and the best explanation has got to be natural. So this is their explanation. However, as far as I can tell from my research, I don't know of anywhere where they've been able to recreate that sort of phenomenon in a lab setting. Right. And for it to self-sustain long enough to have an intelligent flight pattern.
I've heard people say they've seen videos of swamp gas. I really haven't spent a lot of time looking into it. Ball lightning stuff I've seen, which is fascinating, but it doesn't have the same quality of what you're describing.
Right. It doesn't self-sustain. It's more like if it does sustain for any period of time, it loses that ability to hold any kind of substance to it. So, or it comes up. It usually doesn't last very long, and it'll burst. So that is a real thing. However, these lights seem completely separate from that.
Right. So what do you think the explanation is?
My personal explanation, as far as I can tell from all of the research I've done, is it tends to be some of the quick ones I think that those are leftovers, where they're basically, it's something of some substance that's leaving and entering our dimensional plane. And the ones that are moving and able to move intelligently, I feel like those are ones that's kind of just moving in or moving out, and they're still kind of stuck in energy form. I feel like a lot of stuff we see has a lot to do with the energy.
Right. Yeah. I just had a guy named Pete Orbea out of Port Gamble, Washington, on the show, and we got diverted talking about the lights based upon the whole conversation of near-death experiences of people seeing lights, whether or not you should, go to a light. One of the big things Art Bell always was befuddled by was whether or not he should go towards the light, because some people say go towards the darkness, the light is the trick, which in itself could be a trick. But the idea that light, especially white lights, which seem to be the most common, would you agree the white lights are the most common?
White and blue tend to be, yeah.
My guess is the same as yours, as something is entering and leaving, and how it's doing it, but it seems to be its true state, right? Yeah. Would you agree that the lights are the true state of what they are, and they can become these other things?
I feel like that's the raw state, but I feel like that's the raw state of all of us. Like, if you remove our body, that's our raw state.
Yeah, I mean, and even religious-wise, if you're looking at the Shroud of Turin and the body of Christ, a radiation event happened into the burial cloth, and a man was transformed into light. They've never been able to debunk that. So, it's a fascinating discussion to have about the lights in general. I get totally sidetracked because I've seen these lights too, and they sidetrack you away from, and so much of this phenomena does. And this is what my next question is for you here, and we're going to still talk about the cryptids, but
Yeah.
you're constantly being pulled into these other cool stories. It's kind of, like
That's what I love about it. I don't even write anything down. I'm like, let's just go for it because I'll
Right.
talk about whatever.
Yeah. Well, I had the feeling with you that that's probably the best way we should do this, because you do get pulled quickly, especially if you're inquisitive. I mean, if you love an open-ended mystery, this
Yeah.
is the perfect pastime for you. But when it comes to the lights, they're their own special thing because they seem to be the raw state of all of it. The UFOs, the ghost, and the cryptids, that's their raw state. So it's one of the most common things that lock it all together. And for the people that are invested into the theory of ghosts being ghost things, UFOs being, not when it comes to the lights, because they seem to morph into all these other things that happen here. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And it's like, if you think about it this way, if aliens were to come down and they were to want to study us and they were to want to look just at, I don't know, let's segregate people here, just at white people, and they want to research just white people, you're leaving all the rest of the people out.
Right. Scary white people.
Scary white people.
Right.
We don't even understand ourselves. So, so you just want to investigate white people and you leave everybody else out of it. You're missing so much of the story. There's so much of us there. There's so much ethnicical.
That word.
Yeah. There's so much ethnicity background that's lost if you're looking at one thing, one race of people. You're missing like all the African heritage and stuff like that, and the Chinese traditions and things. You're missing because you're only focused on us. I think the spiritual realm or the paranormal realm is the same thing. If you're focused on one class of thing, one class of entity, you're missing so much else. So while you can focus on one class, you're only going to have one very streamlined viewpoint on the whole story.
What do you think about thought forms that we're creating these events or creating these creatures?
That's my favorite topic. So,
all right, go for it.
So I think a lot of what people experience tends to be themselves, or tends to be something that somebody else has created in that area. A lot of energy that I feel like that plays with us on a daily basis, well, at least for me, tends to be myself, basically, because I'm putting the thought, idea, and energy into the phenomena that's going on around me, which gives it more energy and helps it do more things. And that's basically the way tulpas and even egregors work. Now, egregors work on a higher scale. They're created for a specific purpose, for a specific area, for a specific job, that type of thing. That's an egregor. These were often created by Native Americans, however, tulpas a lot of times are on a smaller scale, and they tend to be created by everybody. If you're told you go into a house, there is a little boy ghost there, and you give them this backstory, you may very well get an EVP of a little boy in a place where it was an old folks home. No kids were ever in there that passed. So I feel like a lot of our own ideas and our own beliefs play a huge part in the actual experiences. These are actual experiences that we're experiencing, but I feel like we're almost creating an entity to do that.
Right. Yeah. Let's look at what you have as far as a body of evidence here. You have some sounds, you have some photos, maybe videos, and why don't we go ahead and have you share your screen, and then we're just going to have you walk the audience through a slideshow here.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you a video first. This is a video that was caught at a really cool place that I used to volunteer at. It was an amazing place, amazing volunteers, amazing people. But there was an entity there, and we caught him running past our camera. And I'm gonna forward it here a little bit.
And you knew
You'll
we
see
can't.
him.
We don't see a video though. Just so you know, we only hear the sound.
Okay, so you don't see the video.
Oh, so when we did our trial run here, I thought it was only audio you were playing. That's why I okayed it. Yeah. So let's see here. I don't know why that wouldn't be playing. Okay, we're back.
Okay, so I'll just share my screen here real fast. So I have, I don't even know what that was. I have a video here. It's of what I call the running man. And he runs past the camera in front of us. I'm gonna skip it past a little bit. And you'll see him run right through here. Here's a slow down so you can see a little bit better. You see him?
Yeah, I saw something.
He did. He runs so fast, so fast. And if you pause it, it's weird though. If you can, it's hard to do. It's hard to pause it directly.
Try that again. Do that last little part again. I want to see that one more time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something. It's definitely getting darker towards the bottom. Is it also linear? Is it tall as well as low?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's very tall, and it's very cylindrical. It's very slender. So
now, were there reports of something quickly dashing around, a shadow figure?
Yep, and he was known after that as the. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get out of this here. He was known he was known as the Running Man. And after we gave him that name, because nobody'd ever captured him before, but he had a bulbous head and very slender body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
He's been captured in still pictures, but no videos. This is the first time he's ever been captured.
And now, what location was this at?
This was in Ohio, an old South Pittsburgh hospital in Tennessee. And they're in
so it's
South
a hot
Pittsburgh.
spot for researchers to go?
Absolutely. It's an amazing place, and they got amazing volunteers there, and anybody who goes there has some sort of experience of some kind.
Okay. What's next, Ashera?
So this is in my own home. This is a video where I get a lot of activity in my own home, and I actually don't live at this house anymore, but activity happens wherever I go. But you'll hear an audio come through. Sounds like whistling.
Yeah, that's a melody.
Yeah. And then there's a bunch of clicks. And then finally I come out of my room.
Wait, did you hear that? Is that what brought you out?
Yeah, I did hear it.
And did you say a bunch of clicks?
Yeah, there's a bunch of clicks after the whistle. And you get that a lot when you see those lights, that flashes of lights, because you'll hear like a quick pop, like static. And that plays with that's also energy that you're hearing snapping in and out. And I'll play it again real fast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's almost like the Close Encounters theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the clicking and the popping sound is something we talk a lot about on the show. I don't hear a lot of other people talking about how connected that is with activity, because traditional poltergeist activity is the rapping of the walls, is, the Trinity knocks, right? But these other anomalous sounds, like the sounds of something clicking or snapping or popping or hitting, Bigfooters would just tell you that, oh, I had a Bigfoot slap a tree or slap my house. That's not what's come back at all as far as where we've been. There's something energetically happening to substrate. So that's really cool to hear you acknowledge that.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very important thing to pay attention to when you start feeling, because a lot of people are sensitive to that energy buildup too. When you start feeling that energy buildup around you, pay attention, because if you start hearing these snaps and pops, and even I've even heard them get a little more bassy sometimes, but usually they're like the quick like snaps and pops. Pay attention, because that might be something trying to come in and getting ready to communicate with you.
There you go. Okay, what else you got?
All right, so I have so there's a spot where I go often. I frequent the place, and it's in my area, and we tend to get a lot of bowed trees, and it's going to tell me to, there we go. You see a lot of those bowed trees, and these trees are massive. I don't know if you can see the size of these in the picture, but these trees are not uprooted. They're actually bent. Looks like they're bent over time. And you get that
Right.
a lot in Bigfoot locations.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to theorize why. Why do we get all these snap trees in these Bigfoot locations? Oh, it's going to keep downloading each one.
That's okay.
And I feel like this area right here is a really good explanation as to why you're getting these trees, because you can see it pulls the trees up out of the ground a lot of times. And it's not from anything falling on these trees.
Mm-hmm.
And I've looked at the roots of these trees, and they're deep rooted. They're not like, the roots are not laying just right on top.
Okay. And what is that? What's that pockmarked dead tree there?
So this tree right here, this tree I thought was really weird. It actually looks like it's had a lot of damage to like ash borer bugs and beetles. So I was just taking a picture of that because you can see this right here. You tend to get that a lot when there's been old snappage off of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of old breaks off that tree.
Okay.
So I like to take pictures of stuff like that. It just helps me know how long this tree's been being tinkered with. But that tree is getting ready to come down naturally because of the ash boring beetles.
Do you think the trees are being used for anything other than a marker? Something more in the way of a way for them to access space and time?
I think you get a mixed bag. I think that there's several different reasons why you get a lot of these tree structures. This one here, it seems to have had some sort of fungus on it, but it's not like any fungus I've ever seen. But a lot of the trees that I see in my area tend to have fallen because they are being pulled a certain direction. And I'll show you pictures. They all seem to be, there's different points where they seem to be pulling this centralized point, almost like it's creating its own teepee. And I don't know if you've noticed, there's a lot of these really big, massive teepee structures in Bigfoot locations. And they're like, Bigfoot tore these down. I'm like, that's a big Bigfoot, like that's a really big Bigfoot to tear a tree down like that. I really feel like it has more to do with the energy of the area. But like if we pay attention to the energy of the area, we can also understand better where we might be able to find this type of phenomena. If we pay attention to high energetic areas where you're finding a lot of these structures like this, I feel like these structures, these big tree structures, are not happening because they're creating them. I think it has to do with the energy. And these areas are easier for them to come and go out of.
Ashera, what do you mean by energetic areas, and how do you know if you found one?
Well, there's different ways. I tend to look at crossing ley lines. So if you want to lay down a map and do your ley lines on your map, figure out your ley lines on your map. There's also geomagnetic energy that you can actually trace and pinpoint. There's through like maps that NASA and other agencies provide to you. And that was all thanks to Nathan Paul Isaac. He's a really good researcher, and he actually found out that you could look at these geomagnetic maps and overlay them and see where you get a lot of high geomagnetic energy. And then there's also, a lot of times the way I do it, I walk into an area and if I'm like, my skin's tingling, I'm like, this has got to be an area. I know it's not the best way to do it. It's not the most scientific way, but it gets the job done.
So your gut tells you where these spots are?
A lot of times, yeah. And then other times I'm able to trace down why there's higher energy in the area, whether that be from quartz, which can spit energy back out in bursts, or limestone. Water flow, the flow of water tends to hold a lot of energy in itself. That's why you get a lot of people will say, well, there's water flow, and then there's quartz, and there's limestone, and this is a great place for supernatural activity. It's because it's producing its own energy. Water flow is its own energy. Quartz spits its own energy out. If there's high geomagnetic energy, that's a natural source of energy. It's all these places that are already such a high source of energy where other energetic things tend to stick, like glue.
Right. Now, have you done anything at all to ever alter your consciousness, either through music or substances, to contact beings at these places, or rituals?
I have. I've actually dabbled in a little bit of a lot of that different types of stuff. I've tried different teas to see if I could, which that has to be done with a really well-trained person that watches over you. I've done that. That was, I don't remember much of that. That's the thing.
You mean you've had a mushroom spotter is what you've had. That's what we're talking. Yeah, a shroom spotter.
Basically.
Right. It's all good.
But I feel like it's all in the name of research. So
right. Yeah. Here's some Doritos while you're shrooming out.
Good. Yeah, but I've tried different techniques. I've meditated in high energy areas. I've tried different frequencies, played different frequencies, and try to really, get out of my own headspace, and tried that. I've tried, the teas. I've tried a little bit of everything. I'm willing to do things up to a certain point in the name of research. So I've tried a lot of different. It gets a little touchy when you get to that mind state, though.
Right. Yeah, and you don't want to have to rely on having to do that. You want to be at a place that offers it without you having to work so hard to experience it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That, and it gets a little scary. I'm not gonna lie.
Right. Yeah.
It's a little scary. It does. It gets a little frightening. So I don't tend to do it often. Like even the whole thing of frequency meditation in those areas can get pretty frightening, because it opens you up even more than you already are, and you start to feel out of sorts, out of your head. You start getting dizzy, and then you start getting all these flashes of things coming in. You'll start hearing things, and it's like it's a very freaky place to be.
All right, take us to more freaky places.
All right, so I have share. Okay, so I'm gonna back out of this one. I gotta try to pull it down. There it is.
And feel free to make them, enlarge them if you need to, because whatever you can do on your computer will help the audience see a little bit larger.
Perfect. I will do that then. So I'm just going to show you really quickly. Where's that? It's right here, I think. So this is the actual center of the point where it's pulling all these trees in. And back here, I showed you the trees in a more backed up view, so you can see a little bit better. I try to get multiple views so everybody can see a little bit better.
Okay. And are you loading a video?
Yeah.
Okay.
It shouldn't be a video. It should just be a photo, but
here it comes.
There it goes. All right. So that's the center of it. And it's just going to turn. And you can see even the little trees are affected. So I'm going to zoom in here. And you can see even the little trees are starting to twist.
Oh, yeah.
Look at this little twist right here. And this one's already starting to pull inwards here. And this one pulls inwards here. You get a lot of these inward pulling sections. And I almost wonder if it's high energy places. You see all this big trees being pulled to the center?
Yeah. So that one there that is leaning far left as another one beside it that is also taken off to the left as well. So is that the direction we should generally be looking in this photograph, as things are going off to the left?
Well, that's the thing is, it just depends on at what point I took the picture, because if
Okay.
I show a video where I go in circles and you can see the whole entire set of trees just is being pulled inwards into this circular spot.
Right, and you think that that is
And
some energy field and not a Sasquatch necessarily.
I feel like that has more to do with the energy of the area
Mm-hmm.
than Sasquatch, because all
Right.
these trees are still alive, and this type of growth has to happen over time. It can't be quick because it'll break the tree, and it can't be
Mm-hmm.
too quick or it'll uproot it. So you can see a lot of these trees, they're all still in the ground. They're all being pulled to one centralized
Right.
location.
And as for a guy here in the Pacific Northwest, our woods are so filled with underbrush that we never get the
Hmm.
visibility that you get with your photos. So it's really interesting to be able
Yeah.
to see trees fully like that. It's just not something you can experience up here.
Right. Yeah. And this area is really well kept through here, and
Now, are you at a
they do.
park or what kind of location are you at?
I'm actually within a state park. This
Uh-huh.
area is within a state park. And you'll see a lot of these grapevines here. Those are grapevines, like this right here that goes up and comes back down. So that's a natural growth for a grapevine. So those, and this right here, this was very odd. This was a burn pattern that was noticed on one of the trees, almost like a radiation burn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in different spots. And I thought maybe somebody come through here with a torch. Maybe somebody was defiling the tree. So not defiling, really, but
Well,
not
it's called
defiling, defacing,
right.
defacing the tree. But then I looked up and I'm like, oh my God, it goes all the way up. Do you see all these little burns?
Yeah. And that's not a
burn after
mushroom at all
mushroom.
or some kind of fungal infection?
Nope. And that's why I went
Yeah.
and focused on kind of the bottom portion
Right.
here, because you can actually see that's burns,
Mm-hmm.
and that went all the way up the tree, and
Now,
that was kind of.
are there strange lights seen out there as well?
There's often strange lights to the point where they almost don't even get reported anymore. You will see them a lot. There is an airport near this area. So that's just turkey tail on the tree. That's a type of mushroom.
Right.
But there is an airport that runs through this area. However, you can tell the difference between a plane and something that shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a very large, very, very, very large deer print. And this is a bedding down area. This is a spot where we found, now you can't see it from this picture. It's hard to really get the angles and the depth in a picture, but there's like a shoulder area over here. This is a head. And then there's a little spot over here, maybe where another one was.
Okay.
And I get a better shot of it. You can see as I'm coming around.
Mm-hmm.
Look how big it is. Like this is an exact circle over here. This is an exact circle over here. And I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think happened there?
To me, it looks like that's a nice fluffy bed for anything. Anything could have bedded down through here. However, I think we did end up finding here's some holes. You'll see this a lot in areas where these creatures will bed down. You'll see instead of seeing prints where they get up out of their beds, you'll see finger holes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, they're using their fingers, and then if it's a soppy area, their fingers get sunk into the ground, and they leave their finger holes behind. But they really try hard.
Is this mainly a Bigfoot hotspot, or are there other cryptids out here?
I have never seen a Bigfoot here. I have, however, seen the best thing I could conclude to being a dogman. This is a very large deer print.
Oh yeah.
It's about 5 inches long.
Yeah. Massive.
Yeah, and then here's some more of the pulling trees. This is actually a different area than the other one. We found a centralized pull spot and I feel like that's where the energy is basically, and you see the trees are coming in right here. I feel like that pulling in of the trees is basically where you get this constant like erupting of energy, either pulling in or pushing out, and you're going to get a disruption of the ground in the area, of the growth in the area. And I wonder if that's what we're seeing is the teepees, the big, huge teepees we're seeing is basically we're seeing the centralized portion of the portal, almost.
Yeah. Now, do you ever stay the night at these places?
I do when I can. I stayed a couple nights at the first location I showed you, where you could see a lot of the clearing of the underbrush. So I stayed the night quite a few times in that location. You get a lot of really cool stuff. That I set out a lot of stuff. I play with them. I say I play with them because I feel like it's such a more innocent way to look at it than investigating or researching them. So I'll play with them. I'll put stuff out for them to tinker with, make sure it's something that I think they like. They tend to be drawn to the color blue. So I'll put like blue toys, blue light up toys, blue musical toys, see if I can get anything to light up or go off in the middle of the night. I'll put out different types of cameras. And a lot of times I won't catch anything on camera, but I'll find all of my stuff moved. All of it moved. Up in the tree, under the leaves. Like, I mean, it's like they're playing back. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, so when do you hear footfall? Do you know that you have action, or do they wait for you to go to sleep? What happens?
No, you hear footfall. They tend to, a lot of times, at least in my area, that they'll come out more often if you aren't looking for them. If you just sit down around the fire and you just hang out and just talk quietly, that's when you'll start to have them start creeping in. They get real curious and they want to know what's going on. And that's when you start to hear the footfall. Or before you even hear the footfall, you'll start getting little things thrown at you, like an acorn. And you're like, I'm not even under a tree, you know? So
Right. Now, do you go about recording? Do you leave out audio equipment or anything like that?
I do. I leave out audio equipment. I really wish I would have had more to pull because I have a lot of cool audio equipment. I have a lot of cool audio that I've done with the equipment that I have. And there's one that it's not audio, it's video, but you can see rocks are coming from who knows where. The little teeny tiny pebbles, they hit the ground, you see them bounce up, but they disappear. So when they disappear, you're like, okay, so you're not, I just assume it was little tiny rocks, little tiny pebbles. I never did find one though, because you could see them coming in, you could see them hit, bounce up, and then they're gone. I was actually going back and forth.
Is it a flurry of little rocks, or is it one individual after another?
It was one after the other. It was like one, and you heard a ping against the grill, and then another ping, and then another ping, and I'm like,
yeah.
And my dog was outside on the back deck at the time, and she starts freaking out. She's panting real heavy. She's like, I don't know what to do. She's like walking around. She don't want to leave my side, but she don't want to be outside. So I'm like, okay, I'll put you inside. As soon as I put her inside, that's when a bunch of other stuff started happening out in the field. So I have some video of that, but I have to go back really far to find that.
Now, do you live in a place where you can have an opportunity of having visitations like that? Are you out in the suburbs? Are you out in the wilderness?
I live actually inside of the state park that I researched.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was in this state park where I saw the best description I have of what could be considered a dog man. That's the only cryptid I've ever seen. So
walk us through that.
So I just bought the place, and I hadn't really lived out in this type of country setting before. So I was enjoying the stars, and I was standing out in the middle of my yard. I'm just looking up at the stars, and all of a sudden I see these little white things in my periphery. I look down real fast, and it's two possums, and they're chasing each other. At least I thought they were chasing each other. They run across my yard and into the road, down over the other side of the road. And I'm like, I don't really want to go in. It's a nice night. The stars are clear. So I climbed up on top of my full-size van. So like, they can't get me up here, and I can look up and not have to worry about them. So I'm sitting there, and I sit up and I look, and there's a line of pine trees that line my property. And there's a shadow that starts coming through my pine trees. And it was such a bright night. It must have been a full moon, because the trees were even casting a shadow. So it was within the shadow of trees that this thing was walking. And I'm like, that's a really big deer. That's a really, really, really big deer. And I'm looking, I'm squinting, and I'm like, just come out of the shadow. I want to see what in the hell you are. So it comes out, and as it comes out, I start seeing its nose first, and then I start seeing its face, and it gets to about, its shoulder portion, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at. I have no idea what I'm looking at. So I start panicking. Heart. It's beating. I'm freaking out. And the best way I can describe it is a science experiment gone wrong. Whenever I would talk about it before I learned of Dogman, because this was pre me learning about Dogman, I knew of werewolves. I didn't know of Dogman. And so I'm looking at this thing, and it's almost crawling on its belly. It's got its arms all bent up real far, and it's like walking on this part of its arm, and its belly is almost dragging the ground. Its head's real poofy, so it gets about to the shoulder area, and its front legs are kind of like sparse on the hair, and then as it goes back further back, its hind end, the hair gets more sporadic. It gets less fluffy. And then, but at the base of its tail, it gets fluffy again. I saw it for a good 5 to 7 minutes. That's how long I watched this thing walk across my yard. And so as it's walking across the yard, it's kind of got its head going back and forth. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. And I'm thinking, okay, I've worked with dogs a long time. It was a dog-like creature, but it didn't look like a dog in the face. After watching the Jungle Book movie, it looks like the hyena in the Jungle Book movie. That's my best description that I could give it, because I knew its face wasn't quite right. Its face was really weird looking. And so I'm like, okay, I've worked with dogs for years. I got this. And I'm like, that thing is not a dog. And I'm freaking out, and my heart's pumping, and it goes into the middle of the yard. I'm trying to stay as still as I can. At this point, it never looked at me, never even acknowledged me. I'm holding my hands down real straight, and I'm shaking, but I'm trying real hard to stay real quiet and real still. And then it stops. And I'm like, no. And then it picks its head up, and it starts sniffing the air. And I'm like, oh, no. Like, it caught my scent, and I'm like freaking out. And like, I feel my heart just drop as soon as it like sniffs the air, and it puts its head back down, still never looks at me. Head back down. Tara completely changes its direction to head back towards me, because it started off on the far side of the yard. It was headed across it. I'm on this side of the yard. So it stops up here, and it comes around and comes back to me. And as it gets to my feet, I honestly thought I was going to pass out. Like, that's how hard my heart was pumping. And I'm like, please keep it together. And it stops right under my feet, still has not looked at me at this point. Then it pushes up on its front legs, never even got up all the way. Its arms were still bent a little bit, and was able to reach the bottom of my feet to smell them. And I don't remember its eyes. I don't remember what its face looked like. It might have been because I was freaking out so bad that I don't really, I blocked that memory. But when it was sniffing my feet, I knew it was sniffing my feet, but I don't remember what it looked like in that moment. So I can't tell you what its eyes looked like or anything. So it put its head back down. And then it just starts with the sniff in the ground. It's not even making like a sniffing noise like normal dogs do when they sniff the ground. It's like just got its nose just like dragging the ground just back and forth. And I'm like, what in the world is this thing? So then as soon as it gets across the road, same direction the possums went, into the shadow of the trees on the other side of the road, I jumped off that full-size van. I hurt my legs really bad, because I remember my feet hurt for like 2 days after that. And I ran in the house, and as soon as I got that door shut and locked, and I put something in front of it because it was a glass door, I crumbled. My legs completely gave out on me. That was it. I was done. It was like all that adrenaline that had been pumping while seeing this thing, it was like it all left me in that moment as soon as I knew I was safe. It's the scariest thing ever.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
Of course you say wow after hearing a story like that. I mean, you described something that is absolutely physical, not supernatural, metaphysical, ghost-like. It was a physical being that you had an encounter with.
I absolutely believe that this thing was 100% flesh and blood and a creature, okay? That does not say that it's from here, though. It was definitely real. I could see it. I could smell it. I could, and it smelled like dirty dog, to be honest with you. It just smelled like dirty dog. Mm-hmm. But it was just like, it was real. But in the moment, I think back, and in that moment, there was never any noise of the neighbors. No dogs barking. I live in a little subdivision within the state park. And there's neighbors, there's dogs around the area. There's always something going on. My neighbor, I mean, I don't know what he's on, but he's up all night long. Always has been. And there was nothing, no noise, no nothing. It was like the world stopped. So I was like,
which is a very
maybe.
common thing for people to say when they have a highly charged supernatural event. They talk about a vacuum.
Yeah, it was like a bubble. I called it a bubble. It was like I was in my own little bubble with just this thing, and I didn't know if it was going to eat me. So it was the scariest experience I ever had. I've had a Bigfoot experience, but this thing, that doesn't come anywhere near close to what the fear I felt in this moment.
Did it have man-like attributes?
Not really. No, no, not really. I remember its feet was very long, but now that I've started researching Dogman after my experience, it makes me wonder if it's not that third joint that everybody's talking about. Because its legs, its feet, its arms, its pads looked very, very long. But maybe it was...
So it had the hocked legs in the back?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And the back legs, oh, no. It didn't have the backwards facing legs. It did not. I knew that its back legs were off, but it was almost as if they were bent too far, almost. Its back legs were off, but it didn't have the backwards joint.
Right.
It did have that frontal joint like a dog, but it was much longer, much thicker, and just bent at a weird angle. That's the best way I can describe it.
Did it have a presence about it that seemed like it was nefarious?
I thought best way I can say is I think it was sick. It looked sickly the way it was dragging itself, and I was still scared to death.
Right, sickly or not, right?
Right. So I can imagine seeing.
Right.
Oh my God, we figured out what brought COVID.
Right.
So I just. I think that it was sick, and I can't even imagine seeing this thing in true form if it was in its, in a healthy form. I think it would have probably killed me if it was healthy.
Really?
But it was scary. It was scary. It just didn't seem like it had the energy to, in all honesty.
Wow, and that was the last, had you heard encounter stories before that from that area?
Not of Dogman. I did look back at, but a lot, again, that was a time frame where Dogman wasn't really well known. Nobody really talked about it because even me as a researcher, I hadn't heard of it yet. This was like almost 10 years ago. And so when I described it, I didn't want to say werewolf. I was not going to say werewolf. That's movie stuff. So I just described it as a science experiment gone wrong. So I'm sure people weren't really talking about it then, but there was a ramp in the Bigfoot sightings in this state park at that time. So there is that.
And what about the Bigfooters that said that you said, I'm not saying that I'm that person, but devil's advocate, the Bigfooters that say, well, you saw a Bigfoot, you saw a different variety of Sasquatch that's more in the line of a baboon. That's what I've heard other people say. What do you say to that?
I've never heard that. Honestly,
it's the same.
Honestly, when I'm confronted with something that I'm like, well, that doesn't make no sense, I don't throw it out. I hold it there and I'm like, oh, well, I hadn't heard of that, but I'll look into it. I don't know. I guess I have to see what other people's experiences are like. That's what I would respond with, because I don't know if what I'm seeing is what people are describing as a baboon type Bigfoot. That is the scariest stuff I ever seen. I'd be like, well, I think they're classifying it wrong because it looked more like a hyena.
Right, yeah. And a hyena has a shorter muzzle, right? I'm trying to picture. It's not like a Doberman or something.
No, it was I remember the muzzle being very thick, almost too thick for the face. And when I watched the movie The Jungle Book, I saw that movie and I was like, oh my God, that's what I seen, because I've never been able to find anything that looks so close to it except for that movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then what with your Bigfoot experience? You said it didn't compare with that, but what was the difference?
I've never seen Bigfoot. You're probably hearing my pig.
Oh, you have pigs?
I have one pig.
Okay.
She's a pet. She lives inside. So that's why you're hearing her, because she's in the other room.
Yeah, we know about crazy cat ladies, but we never heard of a crazy pig lady till tonight.
It's her name is Portal. Her name is Portal the Paranormal Pig.
Of course it is.
She's been on investigations with me, so she's a cool pig. But if she gets too noisy, just let me know. I'm just barely hear her. So
We have pugs here, so they make noises very similar.
nice. So yeah, I think that if people are classifying this thing as a baboon-like creature, I would highly suggest reevaluating that description. It did not fit a baboon.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, hey, I know. I hear the pigs calling. I think it's probably feeding time. I don't know if they suckle or what a pig does.
She eats dinner, and it's usually around 8. So
It's that
I'm
time.
feeding her.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you if they want to hear more about anything you have upcoming? Do you have a public place that they can go?
I do. My Facebook is completely open for anybody to check out. You do have to friend request me still, but anything that I post there is still public, so you don't have to friend request me to see everything I post. And it's Asherah Vii. So make sure when you put 7, it's in Roman numerals, VII.
There we go. Asherah
Yeah.
7. Hey, thanks again for coming on the show. I know it was last minute, and we will talk in the future. It was a great time. I know you have a lot more to show here on your screen, so let's do it.
All right, and with that, Ashera and Portal the Pig were off into the sunset. Now they will be invited back to the barn here to describe exactly what happened with this hyena-looking creature, and who better than Alex to sit back with me and take this account into talented sketch artist ability, and that's what we're going to do. So I don't know when that episode will be popping out. I may stack it behind episode 107 or 108. It's December. It's madness in all of our houses, and so I ask for your forgiveness in advance for possibly coming out with some of the material here a little bit later than normal, including the YouTube video here of Ashera. That one won't be coming out the same day as this podcast. So that's what's happening. If you want to be a guest, you can do it. Go to strangebrowradio, BRAU, at gmail.com, and there you can write out anonymously, or if you have a guest suggestion, pop that in there. Go check out the merch. That doesn't hurt anything, right? I mean, they get wonderful hoodies available at Teespring. Go to strangebrowradio at gmail.com. I'm sorry, strangebrowradio.com, and then click the merch app or the merch icon there, and that'll take you right into the store. I suggest getting a size larger just because you're buying online, and I think that it's safe to say that you might want to buy one size larger than normal. Okay, that's it for me. As always, I will see you in the truth.